everyone, welcome back to the sacred space. My name is Kalu and I'm also known as the Scribe Priestess, and I make videos about spiritual development, spiritual practices, nature-oriented art, and writing. On the video of today, we are going to jump inside a very special and very fun subject to me, which is spiritual practices. So let's get started with today's video. I'm so excited to be talking about this because I want this channel to surround itself into spiritual practices. I am going to be talking in a lot of different subjects that has to do with spiritual development and also the spiritual awakening, spiritual journey, and a very key part of all of these subjects are spiritual practices. Since I was a little kid, I was very fascinated about how is it possible that we live in such an amazing big world where we can learn about so many different cultures and so many different ways of seeing reality. So, there is that saying that the more you travel, the more you open up your mind. And I have to say that's true, because part of traveling and exposing yourself to other ways of thinking, other ways of living, it's just going to eventually pop the bubble where you might be living and just go like, oh my god, I am living in a very different world, and there are a bunch of other ways of doing things that I maybe wouldn't have thought about it in my life, or maybe things that we find uncomfortable or a bit weird are in other cultures super normal, and it's absolutely fascinating. So I love this feeling of being so different around the world, that we are so different, but at the same time, the more you immerse yourself in those differences, in those other cultures, and explore what actually humans are, the more you will find that we also have similarities. That there are also things that make us humans, that connects us to each other and to actually bring us together. And to be honest, my point of view is that those things that brings us together, that connects us, and that reminds us that we are all one, are way stronger than all of the other things that makes us different from another. So part of the theme of spiritual practices is that it's something that connects us to one another. So it's part of this finding that it doesn't matter where you go in the world, you're going to find spiritual practices. And the most amazing thing about this is that more than less, you're going to find that there are certain spiritual practices that repeat themselves in different cultures of the world. And that I find it absolutely amazing. For example, praying, that you have that in so many different religions and in so many different cultures, but the key part of the praying process remains the same. Isn't that fascinating? That's something that we could actually use to bring people together, to start looking at the things that we have in common with a lot of different cultures. Maybe it's just the name that we put to it that changes, or maybe the time that we practice the prayer situation. But yes, so the spiritual practices world opens up for us a bunch of different doors to experience life itself, and how to be human, and how to connect to one another, and to actually see also that it's very human to have this inner wanting to understand what we're doing here in life, to have answers for those big questions, these philosophical questions that the Greeks and the Romans had before, of who are we, why we are here, what are we doing here, who am I? What came first, the chicken or the egg? So that's one of the key things that I love about spiritual practices. There are a lot of different spiritual practices in the world, and I would love for this channel to develop itself in just exploring different spiritual practices around the world, and that I could bring you guys here different methods, techniques that they have in different parts of the world, so you can see how is it that we as humans experience life and experience spirituality by itself, and to ultimately understand that it's very human to try to find this connection again with God, that actually this universal love, you can call it the universe, Shiva, God, Buddha, Allah, whatever you want to call it, is actually a very important part of what it means to be human, and that there are a lot of different names for it, but at the end we are all searching for this loving, lightful connection that we all know we have, that we all know we have it inside of us, and that it's there. I use the word God a lot and universe a lot because those are the two words that I find myself going when I want to talk about this universal love and this universal light energy. But I also like the word goddess and Mother Nature and Pachamama to experience this love in spirituality. And my spiritual practices also revolve a lot around the goddess archetype and Mother Nature. So yes, I wanted to tell you guys that we are going to be going through this journey with a very good company, and the company is of this amazing book. So here is the book, you can see it. It's called Science and Spiritual Practices by Rupert Sheldrake. So this is a very amazing, very beautiful book. I recommend it if you like to know a little bit more on the not only scientific part of spirituality, but find that the job that he did in explaining from a scientific opinion and point of view what spiritual practices are was very interesting to take in consideration. And because, I mean, come on guys, let's be honest and let's be true. Spirituality is something that you have to live. You have to live it to actually talk about it. It's not something that you're gonna read on a book. It's not something that you're gonna look at the TV and then you're spiritual. Spirituality is alive. It's being alive also. But this spirituality itself, it's something which is alive. It's consciousness itself. It's we, it's the universe, God, Goddess. I believe it's amazing that there are people who are trying to put these very abstract feelings or very abstract notions, which are feelings, emotions that we can feel, that we can be certain with our inner eye, with our consciousness about, and try to somehow put it in words in this 3D world that we live in. So in the physical world that we live in. That's why I find this book to be such an amazing one. And of course, I'm going to give you guys my cup of tea there. I am going to talk about my personal experiences and what I have encountered in my own life's journey so far with my spiritual practices and the spiritual practices that I also know. What I found interesting about this book is that he focuses himself on just 7 practices, and we're going to be also doing this so that it's a little bit easier to go through this whole series in what spiritual practices are. So I'm going to go through the 7 of them just very briefly so you get an idea of the entire series. So the first one that we're going to be talking about is meditation. Meditation is, to me, my favorite one. Is the one where I have to say I put my most energy into, where I focus myself 90% of the time while performing any spiritual practice. To be honest, I believe that meditation is something that is going to change the way we experience the human experience, actually, that we experience being alive. Meditation is the key to our powers, to our gifts as humans, and to actually getting again into contact with the consciousness. So meditation has a lot of power inside. That's my opinion. That meditation, it's a key part of the spiritual journey and the spiritual development here on earth. The second one that we are going to talk about is everything that has to do with gratitude, because gratitude is actually something that is practiced in almost every religion in the world. I want to make a stop. I cannot talk about spiritual practices without talking about religion. I myself am not a religious person because I find that religion is an institution, and like an institution, they tend to be very dogmatic. So I don't follow any religion specifically, but I do believe that spiritual practices, regardless of if you are in a religion or not, are going to get you closer to your spiritual journey, to your spiritual awakening, and are going to help you a lot in this spiritual development on earth. And for example, there are the cases of people who are very religious but are not spiritual at all, or people who are spiritual but not religious. I do, for example, admire a lot of things in Buddhism. I find it very interesting how this religion talks about love, talks about the universe and Buddha. I find it to be very interesting. And honestly, I haven't found any other religion that has spoken to me like Buddhism had at the moment that I was learning and studying Buddhism. I also find the story of Christ and what Christ did here on earth amazing, and I love the history that he did and everything that has to do with the path that he did here for us. To me, Christ is also very important. So we're coming back to the second one, which is gratitude. So in a lot of religions, gratitude is actually performed and practiced in the daily basis. The third one that we are going to see are rituals. And rituals, you guys, wow. Ritual is actually a word that is very connected to what a practice is, but the word ritual connects itself to something that's sacred. So you are taking these practices into a sacred space or a holy space. Almost everything that you do has a practice inside of it, has a ritual somehow inside of it. And to me, this part of the spiritual practice is so important because ritual also has to do with habit building and also has to do with shaping and being able to do not only the transforming part of processes, but also the transmuting part of processes. So I find ritual to be a key part of the spiritual practices. And I also find that ritual has, you can go really deep into the word ritual, but you can see it with a good connotation and sometimes with a bad connotation. So we're gonna go into the ritual word in the ritual video. But yes, going to the fourth one is the contact with plants. And this is very interesting because I mean, you can go through so many different civilizations and so many different cultures where you see this interconnectedness between the plant world and our world. And from, the botanic way of healing ourselves to actually experiencing awakening process through the plants. So plants have been since a long time ago part of spirituality and our spiritual development journeys in the world. Then we were going to go to the fifth one, which is the contact with nature. And in this contact with nature, we're not just talking about actually the plant world and what the plants are doing inside of us and the connection we have with them, but what it means to go into nature and experience this spirituality in nature. Why does nature connects us so deeply to spirituality itself? And here it's also one of my favorite ones because I love nature, and from all of the practices, this is the second one. I believe meditation and nature are the ones that I specifically adore and I specifically practice a lot. So nature is for me one of the most amazing ones and very key components of the spiritual journey and spiritual development practices. Yes, so I'm very excited to do this one in nature. I started this channel talking about nature, so you can see why am I so excited. After that, we're going to go to the sixth one, and this one is pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is performed in a lot of different religions, in a lot of different ways, but there is something important in pilgrimage, and I find it to be very interesting because somehow I find that what we're doing here on earth is actually a pilgrimage back to the source, or back to God, back to the universe. And you can see it as going to find your purpose in life, or coming back to the source, or as the hero journey. So I find that there are a lot of processes in our spiritual development that go intertwined with this type of pilgrimage to somewhere holy, to this hero journey. So yes, and we are going to finish this series with singing and chanting. And this is another one that I mean, there is a reason why I'm doing spiritual practices because I love all of this knowledge that we have about spirituality and the different ways that we can connect with the universe, with God, with the source. And that ultimately we are all looking for that. We're all searching for that, and that there are so many different ways to connect to God that it's just so beautiful and so colorful. I love it. Chanting and singing has been performed since centuries, for decades, ages, for different civilizations. They have always chanted and sing. And this is such an important part of what spiritual practices are, you guys, because there is a very powerful healing potential when you do singing and chanting. And there is a very active component of incorporating your physical body to it. So I am excited about this. So yes, you guys, we went through the 7th of them, and in the following weeks we are going to be jumping in each of one of them, and I am very excited to be talking about them. There is going to be an extended version of this video on my webpage, and if you are curious to know what I'm talking about there, I am going to leave the link down below, and you can go and check it out. You have to become a member if you want to see it. So you guys, I am very excited to start this journey with you. I cannot wait. So yes, thank you for having watched. Thank you for being here. And wherever you are, I am sending you a lot of light and a lot of love. We will see each other on the next video. Bye!